it is great to have you on Arnold Stammtisch. And, it is a delight to talk to you today. Now, you have been an expert in so many different issues. I read your bio, and you have been, with the parliament for years and years and years, and you have dealt with the issues of job creation, pensions, local governments, and healthcare, all those kind of things. So it's really fantastic to have you here. So my question of it is, everyone knew when you said that you dealt with healthcare or you dealt with local governments, you know exactly what that is. When you talk about job creation, they know what this is. When you talk about pensions, they know what this is. Now, for the first time, you're doing something where I think very few people know what it is, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, when you say COP26, so I was just wanting to know from you what that feels like, because, I mean, it's like COP, no one knows what the COP stands for. So because I think in the past, there was such a bad job that was done really with communicating in a way. And now you have this challenge to really create better communication that they have. So I said to myself, it must be really tough for you to explain, you're the president of COP. What is COP? It's the Conference of Parties. That's what it means. But no one is explaining it to people. They're just saying we have COP 25, COP 21, and all this stuff. And so now it says COP 26. So I think the people should know it's Conference of Parties. And the 26 stands for, it's the 26th Conference of Parties. And so now you are the president of that. So how do you feel about being the president of something when everything you've done up until now, everyone knew what it is, and now people say, I don't know really what it is?
Well, I think by the end of this year, so we're going to have this event in Glasgow, as you know, in November, and I very much hope by the end of this year, everyone does know what this is, because, this is about tackling climate change. And that is the biggest challenge, I feel, that is facing humanity right now. And I mean, just to sort of build on the explanation that you've given about this, is that, this is a UN climate conference. As you said, it's the 26th year that it's happening. It's bringing all the countries together, almost 200 countries coming together to work and come up with how we tackle climate change. And the role of the president of the COP, of course, is to try and reach consensus working with all the countries as well. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for all of us. But as I always say to everyone, is that at the end of the day, success on this route is going to belong to all of us, because ultimately we all have to agree on how we go forward and tackle this.
No, absolutely. And how much support do you get from Boris Johnson on this whole thing?
Well, Boris Johnson is completely focused on this particular agenda. I worked for him when he was our foreign minister. Right. This was this biodiversity, nature, was all the things he was talking about at that point as well. So I think it's great to have his support. But this is about making sure that we have all world leaders who are signed up to this agenda as well. So now I'm going around the world, talking to countries, having virtual meetings, and trying to make sure that everyone is on the same page. They're coming up with a plan for how they're going to cut their carbon emissions, how we're going to stop the world from warming up.
Yeah, no, I think it is. The reason why I mentioned Boris is because your prime minister is, unlike some of the other countries that are host countries of this event, of a COP event, he is the real deal. And, I remember when he was mayor of London and he started the Boris bikes, and he had me come over to his office, and we rode around the Boris bikes, to make them popular, and had the press show up there and all this stuff. And now, in the meantime, those Boris bikes are in every city in the world. So it just shows to you how someone's idea can really spread worldwide. And, they have it in Vienna, they have it in Paris, they have it in South Africa, everywhere. They have it in Japan, in South Korea. I rode the Boris bike. I mean, they're all over the world. So he's really the real deal, and he really believes in it. And that's what I love about him. And I think that's why your conference is going to be successful, because with his backing and with your knowledge and your passion and all that stuff, I think it's going to be great. But tell me now, what do you think about what is the United States doing right now? I mean, we have now had a change in leadership. We have now President Biden, who believes 100% in this fight to fight pollution and to fight against climate change and all those things. How have we done so far in America?
Yeah, well, I think it's great. Look, I mean, after a 4-year absence from the table, so to speak, we have the US back in the front line of the fight against climate change. And I think the fact that one of the first executive orders that President Biden signed was to rejoin the Paris Agreement, I think shows very clearly the commitment. And, you know, I've been obviously talking, our teams have been talking with our friends and colleagues in the US administration, and it's great. You know, you had the summit last week, and the US stepped up to the plate with a really ambitious target to cut its own emissions. Of course, we'll need to make sure that, you know, we have lots of policies, the US, us, other countries making commitments to actually deliver on the ambition. So with the ambition, we must have action as well. But I think it's great to have them back. And I think it's going to make a big difference in terms of the way that we try and drive for success towards Glasgow.
Right. In 2015, there was COP21. And that was when the first time, I think, all the countries kind of came together and signed on to a global climate agreement. And do you think that that was successful, or do you think that it fell short? The reason I'm asking that is just simply because, you know, the latest study showed that around 70% of the countries did not meet their goals or their promises, whatever you call it. So the question just is, what's your thinking about that? And do you think that this time they make more solid kind of promises or commitments?
Yeah, so Paris was a historic moment. I mean, this was when the world, literally the world came together and agreed a framework of how we would try and limit global warming, how we would sort of fix this issue. And I think one of the key things that was agreed was the fact that the world would work together to limit temperature rises to below 2 degrees, closer to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial level temperatures. Now, of course, that was the commitments that people made at the time. What we now need to do is to turn those commitments into action. So, of course, what we're now looking for is, what are the commitments that countries are going to make in terms of cutting their emissions up to 2030, those near-term commitments. I mean, the good news, the one thing I will say to you, the good news is that over the past year and a half, we have gone from 30% of the world economy being covered by a net zero target, i.e. Net zero emissions by the middle of the century, to now 70%. That's great. But what countries need to do is to come forward with those near-term targets as well, so that you can see the trajectory, the path to get to net zero emissions by the middle of the century. And as I said, the US has stepped up. The UK, we just announced, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, you talked about him. I mean, he's a man with a vision. He announced last week that we were going to cut our emissions by 78% by 2035. I mean, that's world leading. And the one thing I would say is that when I go around the world and talk to governments, they all want to talk about growth at the same time as healing the environment. And I think that's absolutely right. And we have shown in the United Kingdom that over a 30-year period, we managed to grow our economy by 75%, and we've cut emissions by 43%. So green growth is absolutely possible. And that's what we want to see all countries striving for.
Very nice. I have some good British beer here that I'm going to drink.
Well, I wish I could join you. We forgot the beer order here.
Well, it's part of the Stammtisch. So instead of drinking Austrian beer or German beer, I'm drinking British beer today.
Well, I hope when you come, we will be able to have a few beers together as well in one of our local pubs. I think you'll enjoy that.
I cannot wait. So let me ask you another thing. Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results, right? So now my question is, we have done this COP conferences every year. Countries come together, they make promises, and then they go home, and some keep it, some don't keep it. What will happen this year that is different, that we can say, okay, here's a new angle or a new twist? Is it the communication that we're talking about that could be different, or including subnational governments that included in the discussion that could be different? What is, in your opinion, different this year so that we don't, look like we are all insane?
Yeah. So I think what's different this year is that I think we've had COVID, and now there's an opportunity to build our economies back. And I think there is this growing realization that you can do this, as I said, in a green way, where you fix the environment, you create a healthier future for generations across the world. At the same time, you grow the economy. And I do think we're at that sort of inflection point where, and I don't think we were here actually some years ago, but we're at that inflection point where governments, businesses, cities, regions, and actually people across the world are talking with the same voice, which is they want to ensure that we fix the environment. They want to ensure that we get climate change under control. And at the same time, we create jobs for people across the world. I mean, the one thing I would say to you is that, we've had a sort of a lot of information that's sort of made available across the world, but I have had an opportunity in this role, and it's been a privilege actually to go around the world and actually to speak to communities who are at the front line of dealing with climate change. And I've spoken to communities who have had to move from where they live because of drought, because of flooding. And actually, it really brings it home to you that, yes, there are some communities around the world that are on the front line, but climate change does not respect borders. This affects all of us, and that's why it's so important that we deal with it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think that the question really is, will you include this year subnational governments in a discussion and in a decision-making and all this? And the reason why I'm saying is because I was governor of California at the time when the United States did not move the needle forward, but California did. California, we made a commitment to reduce greenhouse gases by 25%, and we met this commitment and this goal, but 2 years early. We were supposed to be there in 2020, and we were there in 2018. Also to move from 19% of renewables to 50% of renewables, the million solar roofs. So we really were like the most aggressive state in the Union, in the United States. So I think that subnational governments have a tremendous power because 70% of them are really doing the reduction of greenhouse gases. So my question is, will you this time make an effort to include them more in the decision-making process?
Yeah, so look, I think the first thing to say, I absolutely agree with you. I think California has been a beacon, and thank you for everything that you have done in driving that forward. But it has been a beacon for tackling climate change. And in fact, just a few days ago, I was on an event where we have a international council of ministers who come together to talk about how we get zero-emission vehicles, electric vehicles across the world. And in fact, Jared Blumenfeld, who's the environment secretary in the California state government, he's part of this grouping. And we were talking about what has happened in California and leading the way. So yeah, absolutely. Cities, regions have a role to play. And as you said, they're responsible. 70% of emissions come out of cities. And we've got this campaign called Race to Zero, which has been running for some months now. And we are getting all of these sort of cities, non-state actors, regions, universities, all signed up to committing to go to net zero in their own areas and committing to do that on science-based targets. And that's so important. And absolutely, cities are leading the way. We've got, I think, around 700 cities in 53 countries, big major cities who've signed up to this Race to Zero. So absolutely, we're going to see the cities there. We're going to see the regions there all come together with national governments at COP26.
Yeah, and that is fantastic. And like I said, I've watched over the months, and you have done an extraordinary job in traveling around the world and really making everyone included in the whole thing. And I think you would have a really successful COP26. There's no two ways about it. The other question I had is about communication, because I think that it is important that we start using pollution, the word pollution more often, because when you talk to people about, we talked about earlier about COP, they don't know what that is. They don't know what 26 stands for. They don't know what climate stands for. I mean, you can ask people, walk around and say, what is a climate conference about? What would we try to accomplish? And they would not, maybe 10% would know, but I can guarantee you no more than that. Every time we do a poll around here, it is not more than that. So the question really is can we go and communicate better by just using pollution and says we are here to fight pollution? Because if we wipe out pollution, there will be no climate change. Because you see that right now, there's not people dying because of climate change. People are dying because of pollution. 7 million people a year die of pollution, but they keep talking about climate change. That's not what kills people right now. Right now, pollution kills people. So that's why I think that the communication should be fine-tuned a little bit more. And I was just thinking about what your thoughts are on that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think this is how we connect with the day-to-day lives of people across the world. You know, lots of people are busy. They're getting on. They're running their lives. They're doing their jobs. They're supporting their families. That's great. And so we need to connect with them. And exactly as you say, talking to them about how you're cleaning up the environment, i.e. getting rid of pollution, so that the air that they and their children and their grandchildren breathe is cleaner, and how that impacts in terms of their health. There is a big connection here between health and a clean environment, of course. And then, how, because of the work that is going on around the world in terms of electric vehicles, building that particular sector, renewables, which again is a big area, how those sectors are going to create jobs for current and future generations as well. So you're absolutely right. And as part of the COP26 agenda, we're going to be having a campaign where we do everything we can to connect with people across the UK. And then, of course, we hope connecting with people around the world. The one thing I have to say to you that I've been very clear about is that this has to be the most inclusive conference of the parties ever, right? What we do not want is world leaders to be seen to fly in and world leaders fly out. This is something that matters to all of us around the world, and we have to ensure that everybody plays their part.
Right. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Now, as you know, and we talked about that, we in Austria, in Vienna, on July 1st, we're going to have also a huge conference, an environmental conference called Healthy Planet, Healthy People. And so I just wanted to invite you to that because, not because I'm coming to your conference. It's not one of those things, I do this for you, you do this for me. I come to your conference no matter what, because I will be there because I cannot wait to be part of that action. And I believe so much of what you guys are doing. As I said, you're the real deal, so I'm looking forward to it. But I just wanted to tell you that's the theme of ours is Healthy Planet, Healthy People. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts about it, what the relationship is for you between those two.
Well, I think first thing to say is count me in. I'm going to be at that conference.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to, and I'm looking forward, to seeing you. I'm looking forward to seeing you. We should drink to that. I've got an imaginary mug here. I'm also looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to work together, particularly on sort of communications, as you said. That's so important, and I know that's an area that there's a lot of expertise that you have. But in terms of health, yeah, absolutely. I think there are two issues here. One is connecting what we are trying to do in terms of tackling climate change with the day-to-day lives of people, and that, exactly as you've just said, is part of that is about reducing pollution, eliminating pollution if we can, and that's what improves people's health and life chances. And by the way, there's an economic cost to this as well as the human cost to the health of people, because unfortunately they get unhealthy, or in some cases, very sadly, will lose their lives around the world because of pollution. There's also the economic cost, and what countries around the world could do with that finance, instead of it going into having to treat people because of the ailments from pollution. If that money can be then employed to build economies, to build jobs, that's what we want to see. So the two are intrinsically linked and connected, and I'm really looking forward to coming to that conference.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Vienna. Thank you very much for the time that you've taken out of your busy schedule to talk to me here today on the Stammtisch, on Arnold Stammtisch, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.